Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the iPhone 13 and see how the iPhone 13 compares against the iPhone 11 in 2025. Now, these two phones are slightly different, as you can probably imagine. They're not the best of all time anymore, but there are still some clear differences here, and if you're in the market, I will say it does make a lot of sense to go and pick up like one of these types of devices more than the other ones. So take a look at that throughout this whole entire video. But first things first, if you do want to pick up either one of these phones, links will be down in the description below. You can get them from there, and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the iPhone 11 and the 13, the iPhone 11 came out a couple of years ago, back in 2019. So this phone in a lot of ways is still showing its age, as you can probably imagine. There's some ways it holds up well, but compared to the 13, it definitely doesn't hold up the best. So with the iPhone 11, you're getting a 6.1 inch Retina IPS panel on the front. So it's an IPS LCD panel. It definitely is a little bit, outdated, as you can imagine, considering all panels nowadays are basically giving you OLED displays. It's still giving you the notch up top, thicker bezels on it compared to the iPhone 13, and it definitely isn't that great of a panel anymore. It's a low resolution, it's an IPS panel, it doesn't really get that bright. So that is essentially kind of one of the issues and the problems that you're going to be experiencing with something like the iPhone 11. Whereas on something like the iPhone 13, this type of phone is definitely going to be giving you a bit of a better experience here for the most part. So with the iPhone 13, this phone is going to be giving you the same size display, so 6.1 inch Super Retina XDR OLED display. But the benefit of this type of panel, and the thing that actually is really nice about this type of phone, is that with something like the iPhone 13, this phone is actually giving you that, Super Retina XDR OLED display. So that right there is actually much better, and that is a really, really nice thing to have. Basically going through and getting that Super Retina XDR OLED display is going to make it just an overall better panel, which that in and of itself is a really nice thing. On top of that, you're still going to be getting a much higher resolution panel here and a brighter panel at that as well. So I think those things are very, very important things to have. I think if you're going to go through and pick up a device, the 13 definitely makes more sense to buy than the iPhone 11. Now on top of that, you're still maintaining lightning ports at the bottom, but less bezel and a flat side on the iPhone 13, which do at the end of the day give me impression that it is a much better feeling phone that's going to hold up better for a longer period of time. With something like the iPhone 11, this phone has this curved side. It's a little bit outdated when it comes down to it. The iPhone 13 definitely holds up much better when it comes down to this. Now on top of that, when it comes down to the back side of both these phones, the iPhone 11 is giving you this solid glass back, which looks great. The iPhone 13 is also giving you this solid glass back. Dual camera setups on the back of both of them, wireless charging on both. Now, some key differences between both that really stand out to me. We already talked about the displays. The displays themselves on the iPhone 13 are significantly better in every single way than the iPhone 11. So that right there is a very, very big thing to keep in mind there. But on top of that, another very big thing to keep in mind here too is that with the iPhone 11, this is a phone that's a little bit more outdated when it comes down to just the way the way the phone looks. The 13 looks better. It's also giving you MagSafe capability, which is really, really nice. So there's little things throughout that just scream to me that the iPhone 11 just is a little bit more outdated and is definitely showing its age more so than the iPhone 13. So kind of keep that in mind there, but that's kind of how both these phones somewhat kind of compare from that side. From a price tag side, the iPhone 11 is costing about $188 in the used market, where the iPhone 13 is costing about $305. So it's about $130 more expensive for the iPhone 13. But as I said before, that's not really a bad thing either, right? It is still very nice to be able to go ahead and buy a phone like the iPhone 13 and give you that type of capability. So it might be worth it to go up to a little bit more expensive of a phone. Now, when it comes down to the camera side of things, the iPhone 13 is giving you a dual camera setup, same thing as the iPhone 11, and they're actually clocked at the same exact, megapixel count and the same resolutions you can film in as well for the most part. So they're both giving you 12 megapixel wide and 12 megapixel ultra wide cameras with a 12 megapixel wide angle camera on the front. So that right there is a very interesting thing. But also, you're able to film in 4K at 60 frames per second on the front side and the back side of both these particular phones. So that right there is actually a very nice thing to have, being able to go through and pick up both of these types of devices that are going to be giving you that type of capability. I think is very nice, and you're basically going to be getting that type of capability on both these phones. However, if it really does come down to it, it is quite clear to me the iPhone 13 is going to be the one that's probably going to be giving you an overall better experience. This is going to be the device that it's going to make a lot more sense to go and buy when it comes down to it. And if you're wanting the phone that's going to be giving you better capability, more quality, things like that, then it does make a lot more sense to go ahead and buy something like an iPhone 13. Right? Like that's the one that's the big one to kind of keep in mind here. So I think this in and of itself is a very, very important thing to keep in mind. So that there kind of covers it up. Now, on top of that, when it comes down to the overall, the software longevity side, this is also going to be something that's very interesting here. So the iPhone 13, is about 2 years newer than the iPhone 11. And I would probably assume that the iPhone 13 is going to last about 2 years more than the iPhone 11. Meaning, if you're going to go through and pick up one of these phones, well, it would make a lot of sense if you go and buy something like an iPhone, 13, that phone, because it is newer, it costs more money. That phone is probably going to end up lasting longer in terms of software updates than the iPhone 11. So keep that in mind there. If you are going to go through and pick up a phone, then it makes a lot of sense to go and buy a phone like that because it is going to be giving you more capability and more quality when it comes down to it. So that right there is one of those things to keep in mind. Otherwise though, the iPhone 11 is still supported with software. So you're going to be fine when it comes down to that. But one of the biggest differences that I've noticed is actually when it comes down to the batteries. The battery life of the iPhone, 13 is significantly better than the battery life of the iPhone 11. So if you are going to go through and pick up an iPhone 11, you are going to notice that battery life is just not as good as the iPhone 13's. And that's just kind of what ends up happening if you're going through and picking up some of these devices. So that right there is something that I love seeing. I love being able to go ahead and pick up a phone like an iPhone, 13 and basically have it give me like pretty decent battery life comparatively to the iPhone 11. So that right there is another very big thing to keep in mind there too. And it makes me very happy and excited. That way when I go through and pick up one of these types of devices, I'm still going to be able to go through and pick up a phone that's going to be giving me some like really good capability when it comes down to that side. And finally, performance. Of course, the iPhone 13 is also going to be a very good performing phone here too. Apple A15 Bionic chip with 4GB of RAM. iPhone 11, the Apple A13 Bionic chip with 4GB of RAM as well. So if you're going to go through and pick up a phone, like I said, it definitely makes a lot of sense to go ahead and buy a phone like an iPhone 13 here because it is going to be giving you a better and faster chipset. However, both these phones do miss out on things that a lot of, iPhones have from a performance side now, like Apple Intelligence. If that's a big deal to you, both these phones are basically missing out on it, but it's not a big deal to me at all, and I don't really care about it. So I wouldn't really feel a way about not getting it on either one of these devices when it comes down to it. So overall, to kind of sum up this whole entire video, I definitely will tell you, a phone like an iPhone 13 and an iPhone 11, there's only one real clear winner here, and that's the iPhone 13. This is a way better phone, and it is definitely worth it to spend the extra money to go ahead and buy something like an iPhone 13. The iPhone 11, it was, it's still a kind of an interesting phone if you want to go ahead and buy it, but for a vast majority of people, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to go and buy it. It makes a lot more sense to buy an iPhone 13. You're getting just better capability, better quality, and that's a way better phone in a majority of ways you can imagine than the iPhone 11. But like I said, I think the iPhone 11 is okay, but the 13 is way better here, and it makes a lot more sense to go and buy that phone. So that's kind of how I see it. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.